today's video, we're going to talk about another 2015 World's Power Pick, and this time it's going to be Fiora in the top lane. With her recent rework, she's become a monster of a top lane carry, and seeing as how the tournament is stacked with top lane carry talent, Fiora is a perfect match for any of these players who really want to make a difference. Now, let me preface this by saying that the nerfs to Fiora are only in her base armor, base health, and scaling health, which means that her abilities and damage are not nerfed. It's only her tankiness. So what these players have to get used to is just how much they can stay in a fight and the positioning that they need in a team fight to not get burst down quickly. Also, in the right hands, this champion's pretty broken. She's pretty OP. Now, note how a lot of the champions in this series are very skill dependent champions. So based on the mechanical skill of the player, the champion's effectiveness drastically increases. So Fiora is no exception to that rule, seeing as how her rework gave her a lot of skill shots as well as a lot of more timing abilities with her ultimate and passive, as well as a kind of a new interesting mechanic with the whole finding the vital spots and really striking from different angles. Before, there wasn't really a champion that you'd really want to strike from different angles. Now, let's jump straight into the strengths of the champion. And number one, she's got huge amounts of damage. If you've ever played against a Fiora, you'd know that she does a lot of damage at pretty much every step of the game. She also has fantastic burst. She can kill tanks as well with the true damage on her passive, and sustained damage because of her low cooldowns and ability to just build itemization. So usually champions that are physical damage have a lot of sustained damage because they base themselves off of auto attacks, which is a very reliant form of damage as opposed to spellcasters who usually have higher cooldowns. She also has sustain. Similar to all the other juggernauts, she can heal during the laning phase as long as she keeps proccing her vital spots, or forget the name, vital points. Anyways, as long as you keep proccing them, you'll be good to go in the lane. So she's also a great 1v1 and split pusher. Now, let's go back to the part where we mentioned that she can kill tanks. So her passive can deal true damage and heal her, and that allows her to kill tanks. And since she has a little bit more mobility than before, this means that we've seen a trend of Fiora's in taking exhaust instead of flash. So what that means is that she doesn't really need to hit the backline at any point during a team fight because of how powerful her ultimate and ability to kill tanks are. So she can kill frontline easily, and she can also proc her ultimate, which is a Janna ultimate on crack, which if you proc that once in a team fight on a tank, you've practically won the fight for your teammates as long as they stay within that circle, which is huge. So it's super easy to do. You've basically won the fight because it's like a Soraka just randomly appears for every member and just starts topping everyone off. It's insanely good. So it's kind of like a Riven with a little bit less damage, but a lot more utility. She's fantastic for snowballing, which is again the trend of all these juggernauts and top lane carries, and is even more so because of her ability to tower dive effectively or do 2v2 tower dives, 3v3, all sorts of different tower dives because of her ability to heal. So her ultimate really allows as many people as you want to get in the fight and come out with full health. Similarly to all the other juggernauts though, she does have some weaknesses, and let's go straight into those. So the first one is that with the trend of taking exhaust, be it exhaust or even flash actually, she is easy to kite. So if you can't dodge the crowd control with the riposte effectively, or if there's just too much to dodge, maybe you're getting hit by a Azir with a Rylai's, she can be kited pretty easily because her dash usually has to hit a champion to actually refresh it and get into the fight. It becomes a bit harder to pull her off against compositions that involve a lot of crowd control and a lot of kiting. And similar to Xin Zhao, she also has little defense. So her only defense really is a riposte kind of thing, and that dash that is very short distance. It can hop over walls, but if you get ganked in the laning phase, it's not really going to help you. So Xin Zhao, one of the big things about him is that his offense is his defense, and his defense is his offense. He doesn't really do anything if he gets caught. He always has to get into the fight. Fiora, kind of the same way. If she gets caught, a lot of the times the champion's best option to escape is try to turn the gank, either 1v2 or 2v3, any way whatsoever. She's better off turning the gank than actually running away. with that being said, she's also very easy to gank during the laning phase because of her poor mobility, exhaust, and whatnot. And that can set her behind in gold because she's so item reliant and has great scaling, which means that she's item reliant. She can fall behind and be stuck at tower for quite a while farming. She also lacks wave clear, which means that her farming is even slower. So she's just this whole snowballing trend of not really being able to farm and catch back up into the game. So the item that she really needs to go for is that 1900 gold spike with the Tiamat, so that she can start pushing the wave over and over and over and really be effective at doing that. Otherwise, she's just going to be perma-shoved and she won't be able to respond in any action that happens throughout the game unless she has teleport. And even then, she's going to miss a lot of waves because of the lack of wave clearance. She's unable to answer any pushback from most of the other top lane champions. Because the champion is so new, like if we think about it, the new Fiora has really just been out for like a month. So we haven't seen much of her and we don't really know how to counter her, what she does really well with, what she does really poorly against. So I expect that a lot of teams and players will have many different champions and crazy picks to actually deal with her and shut her down, maybe even during the laning phase, especially with the little nerfs to her defensive stats as of late. So the picks that I think can really stand out against her would be a Lulu, a Ryze, maybe even AD carries once you get out of the laning phase. And also one pick that I really want to see, which is the Heimerdinger, which we saw from Huni playing in solo queue. So I'm hoping for that pick. And as we all know, Heimer is one of the best champions at actually dealing with any melee divers. And with a Zhonya's and your big rocket, he can really turn the tide of any team fight with people trying to dive. So Heimer, fingers crossed. Again, with the nerfs to the champion though, I do think that she's a lot less likely to be banned throughout the tournament, especially because a lot of the teams will probably have those crazy power picks, but she'll likely be played often with teams that have really decided to put her as a main priority because of her high skill cap. A fantastic Fiora may not have been what other teams have practiced against and will struggle with it. So for instance, somebody might say, oh, my juggernaut pick is Darius. I have shit on everybody with Darius, and I beat all Fioras. And turns out that the Fioras that they were practicing against weren't really that great. Here comes along a Fiora that has put all her work into Fiora, and she beats that Darius. Now that team is caught off guard and really has to change their entire perspective as to what they thought of Darius, Fiora, and the Darius-Fiora matchup. So once we see teams play Fiora and really be successful at it, is when I expect the champion to really start getting banned. Otherwise, a little unlikely. Now, we have to remember that this champion is a hard carry in the top lane, and she can take over games very quickly with her crazy 1v1, split pushing, and unbelievably good skirmish. Now, what a lot of the teams that pick Fiora want to do is create compositions that involve a lot of crowd control and heavy magic damage. So this makes for the opponent's itemizations of dealing with high physical damage a lot harder, because all the items that deal with crowd control and magic damage are obviously magic, or magic resist. So you have Mercury Treads, you have QSS, Banshee's Veil, Mikael's Crucible. All of those are magic resist items, and none of them really do anything against high physical damage. So comps that have a lot of magic damage and CC are fantastic with Fiora. And the examples I want to highlight with these comps are the ones that LGD ran versus QG in both games 2 and 3 in the LPL Grand Final. So this is where Acorn, the top laner for LGD, made the debut of the reworked Fiora. And the two compositions that they ran were Fiora, Lee Sin, Lulu, Kog'Maw, and Braum. And this is a comp that has great skirmishes, kind of weak engage, but has really good scaling with the Fiora, the Lulu, and the Kog'Maw. And more importantly, very little reliance on the ultimates. This is the really important part. Very little reliance on the ultimates. Now, this allows the compositions to fight often and effectively, taking really good advantage of Fiora's skirmish prowess at any step of the game. So for instance, they say, oh, our Fiora just got a lead, let's fight a lot, let's fight more, let's fight more, let's fight more, and just keep going and really push the pedal to the metal so that they can really hammer in an advantage from how strong that champion can be. And similarly, the next game, they ran Fiora, Gragas, Kassadin, Kog'Maw again, and Alistar. So just like before, this composition does not need ultimates to fight often and fight well. Gragas, Kassadin, Kog'Maw, Alistar, and Fiora really don't need their ults to win the team fight. And that is really the key part about this comp, is that it lets you fight as soon as you get a lead. That's usually the strength of a skirmish composition, but a little different to the previous one. This one has a bit more hard engage, and I think that the whole fighting often and effectively is really highlighted by the end game scores of both games of 14-4 in the first composition in favor of LGD, and 21-2 again in favor of LGD. So a lot of kills for the team with giving very little death, so a really strong skirmish comp. The compositions around Fiora really need to allow her to be the star. So similarly how Vayne works, these comps just want to create as many distractions as possible to let her deal as much damage as she can unnoticed, so that she can proc her ultimate and really just win the team fight for your team right off the get-go. So she only needs 4 auto attacks to actually do that, so it's pretty easy win condition for her ultimate. So because it can turn the tide of a team fight so quickly and so easily and so well, it's definitely worth it making Fiora the crown jewel of any Fiora composition. Now, for teams that want to snowball her as much as possible, the risk of playing her can be a little bit high because of her weaknesses. So I expect that teams that actually play this pick to be the ones that actually have deemed themselves, or have been deemed by all the analysts, to have top lane carries that are like, oh, this might be the best top lane carry in the whole game. Otherwise, we might probably expect counter picks. So for the teams that want to snowball her, I expect a lot of attention focused into her lane. So a lot of jungle pressure, a lot of roams, no lane swaps. So probably a situation where either if a lane swap is to occur, the support goes to lane with the Fiora with a kind of an aggressive support, or somebody that can really keep her topped off with life so that she can farm safely, or somebody that just wants to call the lane swap as quickly as possible. So they see a lane swap, push the first wave, call this lane swap back so that you get 1v1 lanes as best as you can. And if you take exhaust, it's even more important for junglers to be in on this and really isolate the other jungler so that you remove all roaming opportunities from the top laner, really leaving the 1v1 and letting that exhaust really do all the work. For the teams that play against her, though, I think crazy counter picks are really what I'm hoping for. I really want to see that Heimerdinger, maybe that Ryze or Lulu, to really shine against that pick and really do well. We have seen Malphite quite a bit against Fiora, but it doesn't seem that effective because she has sustained and true damage, and obviously her damage decreases with the ground slam from Malphite, but even then, there is plenty of times where Fiora can actually 1v1 the Malphite, or doesn't have enough pressure to really, or the Malphite doesn't have enough pressure to really bully the Fiora out of lane if it's a 1v1. But a pick that I've spoken of before, which is another power pick for the 2015 Worlds, was Twisted Fate. And this is a pick that I think is fantastic with and against Fiora. The reason being, Twisted Fate can snowball a lane very quickly. So as soon as you hit level 6, bam, TP top. Again, remember, Fiora is really good at diving. So you can set up a dive really well with that healing ability, with the true damage, maybe even get a little stun on with the riposte, depending on what top laner you're playing against. So she's really good at setting things up. And again, against her, Twisted Fate with anybody else can really yank that Fiora over and over and over. So if you time your gold card well enough, you're never going to get stunned back and she's never going to block it. And seeing as how she's so squishy and the nerfs to her tankiness made her even squishier, Twisted Fate can really dismantle any Fiora and put enough pressure on her to really slow her down for a large part of the game and hopefully create a big enough buffer that you can snowball the rest of the game and win before Fiora starts taking off. I personally, again, I'm just going to say it again so that maybe a pro player watches this, Heimerdinger. Heimerdinger during Worlds, he's great against all the juggernauts and even more so against Fiora. I think this is a fantastic pick that maybe should be revisited. And another thing for the spectators out there is that I think you should expect a lot of the highlight in LCS big plays or hashtag Worlds big plays to really come out of picks like Fiora. So they have a lot of skill to the champion, so you're really going to be able to know how well a Fiora is, again with her passive and her ability to understand where to strike and how to move accordingly. So there's a lot of dancing around with the champion, and she really has a good feel for a duelist. So I want to see a lot of these highlight plays from this pick because I think it's very entertaining to watch, except for when her ultimate gets proc, because that seems pretty bullshit for anybody that wants to play against that. So, thanks for watching.